Hey, welcome back to Joy in the Journey. My name is Donna, and my videos are all about my life, just sharing my life. It started with wanting to do a surprise video for my mom and dad for Christmas, and I never got to it until I started it about, I'd say 5 or 6 weeks ago. So, this is video 7. I had attempted to make video 7 last week, but I ended up having to stop the video. Excuse me, I've got to excuse me, clear my throat. I had to stop the video because of unexpected company. So anyway, they didn't know I was doing it, so that's okay. Anyhow, so the last video that I had made, I entitled it Newington Children's Hospital Part 2. So I had talked about my time in Connecticut, the Newington Children's Hospital in Connecticut, and some of the fond memories that I have there, and some of the not so pleasant things that little kids have to go through. I entered that hospital when I was 8 years old, I believe, 8 and a half, something like that, and I spent 2 years of my life there. So whenever we would go back after that, up until the time I was about 18, it was like going home, because you tend to develop very strong bonds with a lot of the doctors and the nurses and technicians and porters. The porters were the men that basically did all the janitorial work, as well as transporting, hence porter, transportation, that would take the kids from different units and floors and places they had to go for, like physical therapy, or the hospital even had a dental department, which I had told in a previous video. They only tried bringing me to the dentist once because I absolutely refused to open my mouth. So there went that career. I've been lucky though, because, excuse me, I have to adjust again in my chair here. I'm using an old chair right now because I'm waiting for my regular chair to be fixed. So I'm getting a little bit of a dry spot in my throat here. So I'm going to just take a sip of my coffee that I always have with me. So anyway, like I said, Newington was, although had a lot of things that were very tough to go through, lots of surgeries. I made a list of some of the surgeries that I do, some that I do remember, and some that I don't remember. The first one, of course, was done when I was 2 weeks old, and that was they had to put the shunt in my head, and I can still feel it to this day. It's right about here. There's like a nodule right there. And then there was a drainage tube that came down through here. And I ended up sometime, oh gosh, there was so much, but I ended up having to have this tube lengthened, and I believe that might have been around when I was 11 or something. Not really a major surgery, but had to be lengthened. And Dr. Gom, I think, was the one that had done that. And he was one of the doctors that I had really developed a close attachment to. He was so nice. He was so nice. But I had that done, and then because of my spina bifida, there's an opening in the spine, and that had to be closed, and I don't remember when that took place. Excuse me. And then I had, at the age of 3, a urinary tract, and I call it a revision, but it really wasn't a revision. They had put a bag, what they called an ileostomy at the time, in which I urinated through there. I had my initial surgery at Newington was at 8 years old. I had a skin graft done, and I was 8 years old, and it was caused from a pressure sore that I had developed, that the hospital that I was going to before we discovered Newington was trying to help my mom and dad, my mom, heal, and it just refused to heal. And the only way to fix that was to do a skin graft, which required me to be laying on my stomach for quite a long time before I was able to get back up and mobile again, at least for the short period of time that I did. I then had my spinal fusion. And I think that I had another spinal surgery, but I'm not really 100% positive of that. But I was on the um, I can't remember the name of the bed that I was on. It was a special bed, and I can't remember it right now. Um, I don't want to take too much of all y'all's time trying to think of what it was. Anyway, it was a special bed, and I had a screw here, two in the back on either side of the head with a halo around. And I had my legs were in casts with two screws on either side. And I'm just reviewing all of this because there are some of you that may be new to the channel. And if you are, welcome. And so and then they had rope on either side of the legs with weights at the end and also weights at the head. And the weights were to keep me completely straight. So I was on that for about a year and a half. And then when I was 12, I had the revision. It was a new procedure that they were doing. It was called self-catheterization. Sorry, somebody just walked by my window. And some people have the catheter put in like indefinitely and then have to have it changed periodically. They wanted me to be able to self-cath, which means that I go like every 3 to 4 hours and I put a catheter in. I should have brought one out to show you what it looks like. The first catheter that I ever used, though, was metal. And that was a surgery that's one that stands out the most in my mind, which is what I had started to talk about in this video that I wanted to make last week. It was a 12-hour procedure because they had to reroute the urinary tract system so that I would more or less urinate from the side out of my stomach with what they called a piece of large intestine called a stoma. And or at least it looked like a piece of large intestine. I'm not exactly sure if it was or not, but anyway, I remember it was red, and it kind of reminded me of I'm probably gonna, please forgive me, and I hope that I don't change your opinion of olives, but it reminded me of the pimento in a green olive. That's all I could think of. It looks like a pimento. But anyway, so I would urinate through that. And my mother, bless her heart, had to learn how to change this bag. It had to be changed like at least every 3 days. A lot of times we didn't make it 3 days because at that time it was preached to my parents, make her drink, make her drink, make her drink, you know. And it was always, you know, I had 2 flavors, water or cranberry juice. Water or cranberry juice. No wonder I don't like water today. I really honestly don't. And I made a joke in one of my videos that my coffee has water in it. But I know that doesn't count. So I've been trying as of lately to drink more water. And what I do is I infuse my water with tea, with a tea bag, you know, and just kind of let it sit in there. And I get the herbal teas so that it gives it a little bit of flavor. And I put like a Splenda packet in it, and that makes it tolerable for me to get in. But anyway, I'm drinking water, right? That surgery was a very long procedure. I think I was in the hospital for about a month at that time. And they had to empty my bowels, which required starting out with like mush food, like the first week was foods that were not necessarily clear. I could have, you know, like tomato soup, or I could have porridge, or, you know, mashed potatoes, anything that was mashed, basically. And it went from that to like much clearer liquids for the remainder of the next following week. And then from there, it was lots of chemical things to make me go. And I lost a lot of weight doing that, and I don't recommend losing weight that way. But I did lose a lot of weight that way. I was under anesthesia for about 12 hours. And I remember waking up. Obviously, I was petrified because I was always petrified. Still to this day, I am petrified of needles. getting an IV in me for whatever reason seems to be the hardest thing, is because I guess my veins are small. Of course, I was probably lacking nutrition and hydration, even though I was able to drink, and so they had a hard time getting the IV in. And I had very long hair at the time. I think it was about to the midway of my back at that point, because when I got off the striker frame, that's the word I was looking for the special bed, and got the halo off, we let my hair grow because I had some of it shaved. So I started off with a really short haircut at one point in my life. I've got pictures of that, and oh, yuck. I don't like that haircut. My mother thought it was the cat's meow, but no. But that's okay. But anyways, it grew out. But at that point, at 12 years old, when I had this revision done to do this new thing called self-cath, they had to they fanned my hair out from under my neck and fanned it out onto the pillow. And I remember waking up and seeing the nurse at the desk, and they had assigned a nurse for me, for like a private duty nurse, because this was a big deal. And I yelled to the nurse. I don't even think I was even fully conscious yet, but I kept saying, I'm gonna throw up, I'm gonna throw up. She didn't make it. I did, all in my hair. And they did the best they could to clean it up, and did a pretty good job, because when I finally came to and was able to sit up, I don't recall my hair having any kind of residue in it at all. So they must have done something. But anyways, that was one of the traumatic things, was waking up and yelling at the nurse and saying, I think I'm gonna lose my stomach. And the other was, oh yes, I had already mentioned, my mom had to learn about, now we had to learn about what self-cath was. They even had to show videos to us to educate us. I remember another kid was having the same surgery, and he and I watched these videos, and of course we were totally grossed out, because that's an awkward age, 12 years old, to be looking at pictures, even though they're diagrams and everything, of the human anatomy. It was bleh. You're not at that age where there's nothing exciting about that, and where this thing was going to go. And today I use they're plastic, I guess, sterilized, of course, and have a flouted end at the end of it, where the urine does come out, and the point that goes in to the urethra is very narrow. Of course, it doesn't hurt. I don't feel it. I don't have any feeling from the waist down anyway, so I don't feel it. But that was very frustrating, because now, after having been laid up in bed for so long, because of the recuperation time, because of how major the surgery was, they had to reintroduce sitting up again, and on came those dizzy feelings again. When I got off of the striker frame and into the body cast, which I mentioned last week, and I'll get a little bit more into that in a few minutes, I remember constantly having what we now know, probably it was vertigo, but the entire room would spin. And so when I had this surgery at 12, yeah, I was revisiting all of that all over again. So anyway, they said that when I got back from surgery, I remember waking up and seeing my mother very quickly, because I didn't stay awake for very long, because remember, I had a private duty nurse. And she said, somebody else is walking by my window again and watching me. That's so creepy. Anyway, I had a private duty nurse, and she would, the second I would wake up or I'd make any kind of a whimpering sound, they'd shoot me with something to make me go out. So I didn't even have time to even say, hi, Mom. It was just, acknowledge she's there, and boom, I was out again. I was out for about an entire week. They kept me under and sedated. And so when it came time to, wake up a little more, they did it gradually, I'm sure, to work me off of the pain meds and give me pain meds only as needed, for a certain time. And I remember revisiting that whole scenario again of being really dizzy. I'm dizzy, like holding on to the side of the bed, gripping the sheets, holding on for dear life, feeling the bed go one way and the ceiling go the other way, scrunching my eyes closed for all they were worth, but that didn't work. So I'd have to open my eyes, or, just trying to find a comfortable position for my eyes to be in order till it stopped. That lasted for years. But it's been, I would say, oh gosh, over 20, 30 years now since that happened. So the next phase of my time at Newington was learning to sit up. This was before the revision for the self-cath. I was still with the bag at the time. Learning to sit up again. I had a body cast. I remember the body cast went under my chin here, and it was kind of shaped around the chin here, and then it went up to the back of my head, and the back of my head was shaped like this, so it was kind of like a headrest, and then it was fitted around my arms and around my torso, and I was on the Stryker frame for like maybe another 2 weeks with that body cast on, and then they would still continue to do the flipping, from stomach to back, and then after that I graduated. And that was a big deal. And remember, I told you last week that every little accomplishment, every step towards going home was a big do for celebration. I mean, bring out the streamers, blow up the balloons, and throw the confetti, That's how they made us feel. Even though there was none of that, that was how they presented it. This was a huge deal. So I would eventually get graduated into a regular hospital bed. I will never forget the feeling of being in that regular hospital bed in all my life. Oh, how I love me a bed. Even a hospital bed. Oh my, I felt like I was on a cloud. And there was all this space because, the Stryker frame was only like that big. Oh, well, I'm sure it was bigger than that, but, it was only so wide, and there was no room for me to turn from side to side. And of course, I couldn't turn side to side, obviously. But yeah, it was, oh, wow. It was like all this space. And then I had my own hospital tray in front of me, and, I could eat sitting up, and, they didn't start me sitting like all the way straight up. They would start at, gradual and go up a little more every day until I was all the way sitting up straight, and then they would practice that became practice. That was the first thing. It was starting out at a lower level, and that was something else. Of course, that would set off the vertigo, and then they'd get up a little higher, and they'd do that for a couple of weeks or so, and then they'd get a little higher, and so on, and so that was really neat. And then the next phase after that was we started with the physical therapy. Now, the physical therapy at that point was more because they had taken the cast off my legs. So the lady that I had for physical therapy was doing leg stretches, lifting up my legs way up high like that, bending at the knee, flexing the ankle, and rotating it around and around, to try to get some range of motion going in my legs. So we started from that. And then she gradually started having me do weightlifting. So we started with like 5 pounds, and then she'd give it a little time, and we'd do maybe one arm at a time. And the next thing I knew, I was doing them this way with, laying on my back and going up like this. I was doing, we just had supper just a little bit ago. She had me doing, I think I was lifting 90 pounds on my back, this way. And that was pretty good for a little girl at what, 9, almost 10, because at this point now we're working towards the goal to get me home. And I can see we're at 20 minutes. So I'm going to try to finish off at least the physical therapy part and the going home. And maybe next week I'll talk about what it was like getting home. So one day, oh gosh, they had taken off the cast, and I was fitted for and the body cast, that was a nightmare. Oh my word, that was a nightmare. They had me in their hands, if you can see me, 3 or 4 different nurses down the length of my body, in between these parallel bars, nothing underneath me but their hands. And they're wrapping me with the gauze that makes the cast, the plaster, and they're wrapping me, and I feel nothing underneath me. Mind you, I've been, steady on something, I cried so hard. I cried and I screamed and I clung and I put me back in the bed, but it was over. They did it as fast as they could. These people were just fantastic as far as hurrying to get as much as they possibly could to get through with something that they needed to do. It was necessary, so that they could get the trauma over with, but it is one of those things that traumatize you just enough that you don't ever forget it, but it felt like there was nothing under me, nothing was holding me, and they didn't want me holding onto the bars because that was preventing them from wrapping around my arms. And so, oh, go figure. But that was another one of those really scary times, So after a time with that cast, they did fit me with a back brace that went around this way. I ended up not having to use it because I didn't wear braces anymore when I turned 18. I think I had talked about that in a previous video. I had discovered when I was 18 that I couldn't stand up straight. So they asked me what was easier, because I was integrated into public schools at a time when it wasn't popular to have your disabled child in a regular school. And it was easier for me to function just day to day, to just be in the chair, So anyway, but I'm probably either getting ahead of myself or going back too much. I don't know which, but you can let me know in the comments below, and ask questions if you want. But anyway, so they fitted me for that, and then it was fitting the braces, the leg braces, and I had a pair when I was really little, like around 3, something like that. But I never walked at that time. And prior to the whole walking episode with the crutches and braces, my physical therapist had asked me, would you like to walk? Now, mind you, she's in discussion with all the doctors that are in charge of my care. Although they were of the mind that they could possibly help me to maybe live a little longer than what most with my degree of spina bifida, expectation was. They really didn't hold that much hope, much less would I ever walk. But as I said in a previous video one time, a lot of the kids that were very proficient at it also started very young. So they were like maybe 2, 3, something like that. Who knows, but much younger than me. So they had a lot more years of practice. So when she asked me the question, I was like, yeah, but I can't. I don't think I understood what she was really asking me. And so she kind of took that as kind of like a challenge, I guess. I think she wanted to prove the doctors wrong. The doctors and her discussed it. I don't think it'll ever happen. Yeah, but I think I can. It was this, going back and forth thing. She was taking this as a challenge. But I really attribute Mrs. Zimmerman's wanting to go forward with this, wanting to make this happen, believing in me enough to be more independent despite what I faced, for being who I am today, because I never forgot her words. There was a lot of things she said to me that rung true and stayed with me all those years, and even till this day. And which was, being as independent as I possibly can, figuring out how I was going to do things. Now, granted, as I said before, there are just some things that are absolutes. I absolutely cannot do this, this, and this. But there are other things that, okay, let's think about it. Let's find a way to do it. Let's see what we can use to make that happen, and so on and so forth. And of course, my parents never shied away from different things like that. Like, for an example, how do you get somebody who's in a wheelchair on a beach? It's not something that most people think of. Today, they have those big chairs that you can rent with the humongous tires on them to roll them on the beach, and that's all fine and well. But back then, they didn't have any of that kind of thing. So we improvise. I've learned to improvise in a lot of things. So it was because of her that I have had that ability to do that, to improvise with things. So my parents devised this thing where we put me in a toboggan with a bunch of beach blankets to cushion, because back then I was very prone to pressure sores. I mean, one bang like that, I'm down. I'm down for 6 months or down for 6 weeks or however long that the pressure sore takes to heal. So we would try to cushion me as much as possible, get me on the beach with the toboggan, and even go all the way into the water, put my inner tube on, and I'd swim. I loved to swim back then. Today, it's been a very long time since I've done swimming, and I can't find an inner tube now that would fit me. So, because it works much better with it underneath my arms, around that way. But I was littler then too. So she asked me that question, and I said yes. And like I said, I don't think that I understood what she really meant. And the next thing I knew, I was being thrown into braces. And the next thing I know, I'm standing in front of a mirror, looking at myself, standing up, petrified, and yet I think all at once amazed that I was standing there. And she was kind of laughing, but I don't think it was that she was laughing at me as much as she was, because I was crying. I mean, literally crying. And I don't know if she thought that it was a mixture of fear and joy all at once. I don't know. I have no idea what I was feeling, except that I wanted to sit down in my wheelchair. But that was a very weird feeling, to be on my feet. But prior to doing all of that, they would put me on a tilt table that they would hand crank, and again, just like in the bed, it would lift me up, lift me up, lift me up until I was upright, standing on my feet. There was a platform at the bottom of this bed type thing that they would put me on, and then the board was like this. It's the only way I can do it is to demonstrate with my hands. And that was for my feet to lean on. And they would strap me in on that, and then they'd crank it so it would go up like that. And just to kind of get me used to that feeling of up. And they did that for quite a while before we actually did the whole getting up into actual braces and standing up. Then it was to learn how to stand up in front of the chair. Not necessarily anything in front of me either. Learning how to lock the hips, learning how to first lock the knees on either side, and then, pivot up. And I can't demonstrate it to you, anymore, but that was something I needed to learn. And then the next thing was doing the parallel bars. Parallel bars were fun. That was fun because she wanted me to learn what they called the swing through gait. So what that meant was, and I'm on 29 minutes, but that's okay, was learning how to put your crutches in front of you. Let me see if I can adjust my camera down a little lower here. Sorry about so you would put your crutches in front and you'd swing through like that. So now your arms are behind you, and then have to lift them up and come back forward. So learning that learning that on the parallel bars was giving me what that's going to feel like to do that with the crutches. We did that for quite a while and learned that and learned that and learned that. And then we did a lot of walking. Next week, I'll talk about stairs, teaching me how to fall properly, because there was a way to fall properly. And then talk about going home. And if my mother is watching this, which I'm hoping, I'm pretty sure she's going to, dump me some suggestions, ask me some questions, make some comments if you have experience with disability, or if you know somebody that is, or just want to ask a question. Please feel free, put them in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and to like and click the notification bell. And we will see you again next week, God willing. I thank you so much for being with me tonight. Thank you for joining me, and we all love you here. My kitty cat loves you. I love you. And my darling loves you. And we will see you soon. Good night. Bye. Mwah.